Okay, y'all, so I wanted to do a video follow-up to the first video that you saw for my Wigfall Discovery Project. That's what I'm calling it. So basically, the idea here is that the name Wigfall comes from southern England. If you look it up on Ancestry and some other sites, you can find it. There's a place called Wigfield in the UK I guess it was formerly Wigfall. That's where the name ultimately comes from, southern England. And then there were people there that were industrious and built something for themselves, I guess, named Wigfall. They were white. And then built enough of a fortune for themselves that they got into the Atlantic slave trade. And so that brought some of them here to the U.S., mostly through South Carolina, Charleston, to be exact. It seems that the first one that came is actually named Samuel Wigfall, which is my dad's name, but they were enslavers, and the people that they enslaved, they ended up giving names from southern England, right? So my dad's name is Samuel. His brother's name was George. His sister's name was Alifair. One of his sister's names was Clara, right? These are not African names, but there were people in Africa that were enslaved by traders and then sold to these Wigfalls. This is how I get my last name, right? For now, if I decide to keep it, it's a complicated history, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that. But that led me to this discovery project. It was really because of some land that my family owns in South Carolina, Pawleys Island, that I talked about in the last video. But since then, I've done quite a bit of research and have found out that there is case law for other members of our family of the Wigfall name. Look up Mobley versus Wigfall, put up a graphic for that. But the local government took land from these people, and it is now case law in a book. I'm not really sure what the book's name is, but I'll show the title as I'm making this video. And it was an example of when African American people did not have the power to keep their land. So what is happening to us in Pawleys Island also happened to us in a place that was much closer to Charleston. It's a peninsula that starts with a C. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this is it. I'm going to put it up on the video. So there was land here that was owned by Wigfalls that was taken as well. Now, the land that was owned here in this space was owned by Samuel Wigfall, and then he had children named John, Joseph, and Sarah. Joseph then passed it on to Levi, who is the father of Lewis Wigfall, who is the one I talked about a lot in the last video. Now, I'm meeting other Wigfalls that are black and kind of filling in the blanks. Still looking for some information on how Mary Ann got her land originally. I do have a lead on that. I don't need help. I'm not trying to ask for help on that, but what I am finding out through the Recorder of Deeds and all these other offices is that most of these records for the Negroes is kept in churches, and there's a place called St. Thomas Parish in South Carolina, and there's a couple other parishes that I want to visit this year to get some more information. And I also visited the black graveyard in Edgefield, South Carolina, but there's a white Wigfall. Well, there's a white graveyard in Edgefield, South Carolina, that contains some of the white Wigfalls, including Lewis, I believe. No, not Lewis, excuse me. His sister Eliza and maybe his brother Arthur. But the land was passed down from a man named Samuel Wigfall in Charleston to his grandson Levi. Levi was then sued by another Wigfall named Samuel at some point to try to get land back. There's a lot of lawsuits that are happening within the white enslaver Wigfall family, but I've actually been able to work out who Mary Ann Wigfall is. It's not as far back, nearly as far back as I thought it was. The land sale was in 1938, if I'm quoting that correctly. Let me look at the document. But Yes, April 5th, 1938. So Mary Ann was a free person when she obtained this land, whether it was sold to her or given to her. And I'm on the hunt at a courthouse for the actual books and documents that contain the deed. I have not been able to obtain them. I'm working on having a friend and possibly a family member do that. But also, since that first video and a lot of those videos that I strung together, I had a meeting with the family, and a lot of the history of our own land has come to bear, and it's not as pretty as I would want it to be. Obviously, family drama is always there, which is how we ended up with 13 and a half acres from our originally 26 and a half acres, which is on that document that I just showed that was sold to Mary Ann. So we've lost some land through family trying to sell it, acquisitions by local authorities maybe, but the fact that there's so many houses and so much development around the land shows that we obviously need to protect our land, similar to what happened in that peninsula. So this is a case where it's maybe have happened before. I don't know if all that land was owned by us. There are rumors that we owned 300 acres at one point. That's not what that document says, so that can't be verified. But the fact that Wigfall's in this peninsula owned land, which is not far from Pawleys Island. It's about 50 to 100 miles from Pawleys Island, starts to raise some questions on how much land we initially owned, who all was related. Was it Mary Ann? I don't believe it was Mary Ann that owned the initial land, but did she sell it to another person that was enslaved by these Wigfalls? And then, with the mixing of blood and what you would call breeding, for lack of a better word, basically all the black people that have the last name Wigfall are basically related as well at this point. We're not related to the white side as much unless you have direct blood and DNA from those folks, which also happened. Let's not get it twisted. Think about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Henning and all that. But so I'm sure that happened, but I wouldn't call the white people our side of the family. It's just people that enslaved us, but then all the black people that have that name pretty much either through trauma bonding or through actual sexual relation and progeny are family. So Mary Ann only is my great-great-grandmother. She's my father's great-grandmother. So my dad's Samuel, his dad's George Nehemiah, his dad's David, and his mother is Mary Ann, and she was deeded this land in 1938. So, and she was born in around 1899. So she would have been 40-something around the time that she got this land, or maybe just late 30s. But all of the drama has ensued since that point. I'm on a hunt to find who deeded it to her in the first place, and then that will probably open up some more questions, but that's where we're at right now. It's my great-great-grandmother who got the land initially. The white Wigfalls started in Charleston with Samuel Wigfall, same name as my father, and then that land passed down through Thomas, who then passed it to Levi, and then also was chopped up amongst a bunch of their family. And it's very interesting how many lawsuits you can find about the Wigfalls, where family is trying to get more land or get slaves or things like that. And I hope ultimately I found obviously how this story traces back to London or to England. Eventually through church records and courthouse records, I hope to trace my family similar to what Alex Haley did back to Africa, because I really want to find out who this August person was and find out how his line travels down through the years to see if I'm in that line of August Wigfall that comes from royalty or not, and let others in my family know who is, and at the very least be able to protect the land that we have in South Carolina and let it benefit the family in some way. So that's the update for now. I'm planning to travel back to South Carolina this year, and in the meantime we'll be in touch with some of the folks I contacted from the Historical Society in Edgefield, the Recorder of Deeds in Edgefield, and some other folks in Pawleys Island.